The night I decided to ask for a divorce, I met God. He let me meet my husband at 18 and gave me a chance to change the past. So I made 2 wishes to the 18-year-old version of him. First, don't take the shortcut through the alley. The girl you love will get hurt trying to save you. Second, don't confess to Anna. Walk away from her life. For good. Because 30-year-old Ethan doesn't love Anna anymore. Chapter 1. When I woke again, it was already morning. The cold emptiness on the pillow beside me was all too familiar. Ethan hadn't come home. Yesterday was my 30th birthday. I decided to divorce him. I had finally seen the truth, that he didn't love me, and I was done begging for something that wasn't there. Tears slid down the corner of my eyes, leaving a trail of cold against my skin. But it wasn't tears. It was a figure, hazy, unreal. 18-year-old Ethan sat on the edge of my bed, staring at me in shock. Anna, where are we? Why are you crying? Did someone hurt you? His gaze shifted to the wedding portrait on the wall. Color flooded his face, spreading all the way to his ears. Is that me? I jolted upright and pinched myself several times. Was last night's dream real? I got out of bed and opened the door. The dinner on the table was exactly as it had been the night before, untouched. A velvet jewelry box lay carelessly on the floor. Inside was a diamond necklace shaped like a little puppy. Yesterday had been our wedding anniversary. Early that morning, he had taken our son out to spend the day with Chloe. I had waited at home all day. All I got was that last-minute puppy necklace. I'm terrified of dogs. Anna. Why aren't you answering me? Ethan's anxious voice came from behind me. This wasn't a dream. I turned around and saw the boy from 12 years ago. 18-year-old Ethan, sunlit and unguarded, looked at me like his eyes held an entire galaxy. He was nothing like the 30-year-old Ethan. When I didn't respond, he stepped closer. The moment he noticed the faded star-shaped necklace around my neck, his expression changed. Isn't that the necklace I bought when I was going to confess to you? Did I already tell you how I feel? Are you, future Anna? My future wife? I instinctively touched the necklace, my eyes stinging. Yes, I said softly. I'm your future wife. 12 years ago, in the heat of summer, Ethan pulled me onto the school field. His face was flushed as he held out the necklace to me. Anna, he said, voice trembling, we're graduating soon. I don't want you to forget me. So, this is for you. If you're willing, as long as you wear it, I'll love you more and more each day. I remembered those words for 12 years. I wore that necklace for 12 years. I turned my head and looked at the shattered diamond puppy necklace on the floor, and suddenly I couldn't hold back the tears. His promise still echoed in my ears. But the Ethan who had once loved me with everything he had was gone. He didn't remember that I was afraid of dogs. He didn't remember that he loved me. My phone buzzed. A message from Chloe. Anna, do you like the necklace? Ethan originally bought it for me, but then I remembered it was your anniversary yesterday, so I told him he should give it to you instead. Well? Are you happy? Happy. Of course I'm happy. I stared at the stream of messages on my screen and forced a smile that tasted bitter. Even this gift, the one I didn't even want, was only mine because someone else passed on it. It felt like a giant hand was squeezing my heart over and over. I closed my eyes, afraid I might lose control. 18-year-old Ethan stepped closer, completely at a loss. Anna, don't cry. Did I do something wrong? He reached for me, trying to pull me into his arms, but his hand passed straight through my body. What is happening? Did I time travel? The word snapped something inside me. I opened my eyes and met his panicked gaze. If this was really time travel, did that mean I could change the past? My hand drifted to the ugly scar on my wrist, and my voice trembled. Ethan, can you promise me something? Chapter 2. He blinked once, then nodded without hesitation. Of course. Anna, I'd do anything for you. Anything? The words felt painfully familiar. 12 years ago, that had been his favorite thing to say. Back then, he was sincere, fierce in his devotion. Every part of him loved me. Now, even the simplest concern felt like too much effort for him. I lowered my eyes and made my first request. School's letting out early this afternoon. Don't take the shortcut through the alley. I'll try to save you from a stray dog. It'll bite my wrist, and I'll never be able to play the piano again. He froze. Then his gaze dropped to the wrist I was unconsciously shielding. His eyes turned red almost instantly. Okay, he said hoarsely. I'll remember. A flash of white light streaked across my vision. The 18-year-old Ethan vanished, returned to his own time. The front door opened. 30-year-old Ethan walked in. He was holding our son's hand. When he saw the cold, untouched food on the table, his brows knit together. Anna, you didn't clean up? Do you have any idea how exhausting my job is? You stay home all day and can't even manage this? What kind of wife are you? Our son shot me a look of open disdain. Mom, you're so lazy. You're nothing like Chloe. How can someone like you even be my mom? They couldn't see the breakfasts I made every morning without fail. They couldn't see the neatly folded clothes lining the closet. They couldn't see the 1,000 invisible ways I kept their lives running. They couldn't see the exhaustion on my face, or the tears that hadn't yet dried at the corners of my eyes. All they saw were the untouched dishes on the table. I didn't have the strength to argue. I moved stiffly to the table and carried the food into the kitchen. Satisfied, Ethan headed toward the bedroom. On the way, he accidentally kicked the puppy necklace on the floor. Without even pausing, he bent down, picked it up, and tossed it into the trash. The sharp sound it made echoed through the room and shattered something inside me. You see? The necklace you couldn't even be bothered to look at was the anniversary gift you gave your wife. The next morning, I woke again in the same cold bed. Yesterday had been our son's birthday. I hadn't even been allowed to celebrate it with him. Chloe's post was still at the top of my feed. Happy birthday to our sweet boy. In the photo, Ethan had one arm around our son and the other around Chloe. They looked like a real family. Anna, you're awake. Look at your wrist. 18-year-old Ethan appeared again, eyes shining with barely contained excitement. I listened to you. I didn't take the shortcut. My heart skipped. I immediately lifted my wrist and looked. The scar was gone. 12 years ago, Ethan had been attacked by a stray dog while cutting through that alley. I had been passing by. I saved him. The cost was my left wrist. The bite left a permanent scar and ended my ability to play the piano. But I had never regretted it. Because 18-year-old Ethan had held my hand and said, Anna, you saved me. I swear I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. That promise lasted until a week ago. At a friend's engagement party, Chloe sat down at the piano and played Mariage d'amour in front of everyone. The room burst into applause. When someone casually mentioned that I used to play piano too, Ethan laughed. He glanced at the scar on my wrist and smirked. Come on, Anna. Play piano? Her hand's been useless for years. That night, beneath the glittering chandeliers of the banquet hall, I felt as though I'd fallen into ice water. 18-year-old Anna could never have imagined that the boy she once saved without hesitation would one day expose her scar and mock it in front of a crowd. Just as 18-year-old Ethan could never have imagined that 12 years later, he would completely drain Anna of her love. I looked down at my wrist, smooth, unmarked, as if nothing had ever happened, and suddenly I laughed. I laughed until tears spilled down my face. So the past really could be changed. I turned to Ethan, who still had no idea what he'd become, and smiled at him sincerely. Can you promise me one more thing? Promise me you'll walk away from Anna's life. For good. Chapter 3. He froze. The excitement in his eyes shattered, replaced by disbelief. What did you just say? Promise me you won't confess to me. Promise me you'll leave my life. He staggered back 2 steps. His eyes reddened instantly. Why? Anna, do you even know how much I love you? I know. I lifted my head, letting him see my swollen eyes. I know. When I forgot my textbooks, you gave me yours and took the punishment instead. When someone spread rumors about me, you rounded up your friends, found out who started it, and warned him to stay away. Whenever I had a cold or a fever, or even the slightest headache, you were the first to notice and made sure I got to the nurse. I know how much you loved me back then. And I also know that the version of you now doesn't treat me well. Not at all. He stared at me, stunned. His eyes were red as he leaned closer, his voice rough. I don't believe that. Anna, I love you. How could I ever treat you badly? The conviction on his face was so fierce that for a moment, I saw that boy again. The one who once stood with me on an empty field, cheeks flushed, fingers trembling as he laced his hand through mine, stars reflected in his eyes. Anna, I like you. More than anyone. Yes. If you loved me that much. How could you ever hurt me? How did 30-year-old Ethan forget? How did he just stop loving me? We stood there for a long moment, locked in silence. Finally, I made a decision. I would let him see for himself what he became at 30. I pushed open the door. The house was quiet. Half-eaten breakfast still sat on the table. A mess. That was my married life. He was a brilliant finance executive. I was the unpaid housekeeper. A notification popped up on my phone, a message in the school parent group chat. Reminder, family field day this afternoon. Please arrive on time. I froze. My son had never told me. The moment I stepped onto the field, I saw Ethan and our son. When they noticed me, their eyes lit up and they hurried toward me. You're finally here. The closer they came, the louder my heartbeat grew. Surprise. Relief. Disbelief. Ever since Chloe showed up, they hadn't smiled at me like that. 18-year-old Ethan stood beside me, smug and glowing. See, Anna? I still love you just like before. But the next second, they brushed past me. The smile hadn't even fully formed on my lips before it froze. I turned slowly. They were walking straight toward the woman behind me. Chloe, you're finally here. The dream shattered. I stood just a few steps away, like a fool in the middle of a stage. I looked up at the banner hanging across the field. The greatest gift isn't presents, it's time spent together as a family. 18-year-old Ethan stared, stunned. Then he ran forward, shouting at the man who couldn't see him. Hey. Ethan. Anna is your wife. You love Anna. Not her. But 30-year-old Ethan didn't see him flailing his arms in desperation. He was gazing gently at the woman beside him. That tenderness. It hurt two people at once. I closed my eyes and turned to leave. Then a car suddenly lost control and barreled onto the field. It was headed straight for the three of them. Instinct took over. I lunged forward and threw my arms around my son, shielding him. The side mirror struck my ear as it passed. A searing pain ripped through me. Blood streamed down my neck, soaking into my collar. I barely felt it. All I could think about was him. Are you okay? Are you hurt? My son stared at me for a split second. Then he pulled away from my arms. He burst into tears and ran to Chloe instead. Are you okay? That's when I noticed. In that split second of danger, I had protected my son. And Ethan had protected Chloe. Chapter 4. Now they were all gathered around her, frantic, hovering, not a single one willing to spare even half a glance for me. I thought back to the moment the car had come hurtling toward us. 18-year-old Ethan hadn't hesitated. He had thrown himself in front of me, arms spread wide, even though the car passed straight through him. I could still hear his voice, thick with tears. Anna, are you okay? You're bleeding, does it hurt? I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell him I was fine. That it wasn't his fault. That he had done enough. But the words wouldn't come. My mind was chaos. Tears blurred my vision. When I wiped them away, all I saw was Ethan lifting Chloe into his arms and rushing off the field. Our son trailed close behind him, terrified of being left behind. Around us, parents clutched their children, whispering, some even laughing at my foolishness. The pain in my chest was 100 times worse than the wound on my ear. Ethan. Do you remember? When you were 18. You really loved me. I turned back to the boy who was sobbing uncontrollably beside me and spoke softly. Ethan, can you promise me now? Promise me you'll stay away from me. His breathing faltered. We stood there in silence, each trying to steady ourselves. After a long time, he finally spoke. So because of the 30-year-old me, you're disappointed in me. Right? Yes. If I listen to you, if I don't chase you, you'll have a better life. Right? Yes. You don't love me anymore. Right? Tears slipped to the ground before I even felt them fall. I smiled, though it looked more like a grimace. Right. Okay, he whispered. I promise. My hands clenched at my sides, and I forced another smile. My heart had never hurt this much. Thank you. Thank you for protecting me when it mattered. Thank you for loving me once, truly. Thank you for agreeing to leave me. One last question, he said. You loved me, didn't you? This time, I cried out loud. Yes. I loved you. Once, I loved you more than anyone in the world. We didn't speak again. The only sound left on the field was the wind moving through the grass. After what felt like forever, he said softly, Anna, 18-year-old Ethan really loves you. A white light flashed. We returned to our separate worlds. Ethan. I lied to you. 30-year-old Anna still loves the 18-year-old you. After getting my ear stitched up, I went back to that cold, silent house. Everything was the same as always. Ethan and our son hadn't come home yet. No one was waiting for me. I took the divorce papers I'd printed weeks ago out of the drawer and sat on the couch for a long time. I wanted to end this 12-year love story with my own hands. I wanted to say goodbye to Ethan properly. It was almost 11 when he finally came home. He walked in with our son and said automatically, "Go make dinner. We're starving." Then he noticed the bandage around my ear. He froze. How did you get hurt that badly? I didn't accept the belated concern. I pulled the divorce papers from behind my back and held them out to him. Ethan. Let's get divorced. His expression stiffened, then darkened with fury. Anna, have you lost your mind? We have a child. What divorce are you talking about? Stop being ridiculous. Yes. We have a child. But when danger came, you didn't protect me. You didn't even protect your own son. I took a steady breath and met his eyes again. I've already signed. You should sign too. He let out a short, mocking laugh. His gaze turned sharp. Divorce? Not in this lifetime. Anna, since the day you were 18, you were meant to stay by my side. With that, he snatched the papers from my hands and threw them straight into the trash. I didn't say anything. I crouched down to pick the divorce papers out of the trash. But my hands passed straight through the bin. They were turning transparent. Thud. Thud. The clock on the wall struck midnight. Ethan's life and mine began to reset. Chapter 5. Anna. Anna. My assistant's voice pulled me back to reality. I stared at the grand piano on stage, momentarily dazed. So it had been another daydream. Ever since I turned 18, I'd been haunted by memories that didn't belong to me. It felt like watching another version of my life unfold in a parallel world. In that world, 18-year-old me gave up her ability to play the piano to save the boy she loved, and won his heart in return. At 20, I walked down the aisle on my husband's arm, surrounded by applause and blessings. At 23, we had a child. My husband looked at me and our baby with tenderness and pressed a loving kiss to my forehead. But every time I tried to see the man's face clearly, some unseen force would drag me out of the dream. This time, I saw my 30-year-old self. I watched the husband who once loved me fiercely and the child I gave birth to shield another woman instead, leaving the injured me behind. I asked for a divorce. He sneered and said, Anna, since you were 18, you were meant to stay by my side. And this time, I finally saw clearly. The man who had consumed my entire youth. He was my former classmate. Ethan. The same Ethan who sent flowers after every one of my performances, but never showed up in person. I swallowed the shock, took several steady breaths, and stepped onto the stage under the admiring gaze of the audience. My fingers settled over the black and white keys. The music flowed, warm and soaring. When the final note faded, the hall erupted into applause. I stood beneath the spotlight and bowed gracefully. As I lifted my head, my eyes met Ethan's across the crowd. His expression flickered. Then he turned and walked away. Backstage. I was about to swallow my medication when a sudden sharp pain shot through my head. Dizziness overwhelmed me, and the pills slipped from my fingers, scattering across the carpet. I thought new memories would come again. Instead, it was just pain. A deep, suffocating ache in my chest. My assistant rushed in with a cup of herbal tea, panic in her eyes as she helped me to the couch. When she noticed the pills on the floor, her expression grew even more worried. Maybe we should go to the hospital and get this checked out? I shook my head. Take me home. Chapter 6. When I finally lay back on my bed, the headache began to fade. My thoughts followed. When I was 18, I really had liked Ethan for a while. I was known as the piano prodigy. He was the violin genius everyone talked about. Teachers and classmates were always pairing our names together, as if we were destined for the same stage. When I heard he was planning to confess to me, I secretly looked forward to it. Until the day I saw him in the music room, standing close behind a younger girl, guiding her hands on the violin with patient gentleness. The excitement inside me was extinguished instantly, like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water over my head. Rumors were just noise. I shouldn't have built hope on whispers, or wasted time waiting for a future that might never come. Once I made up my mind, I applied for a fully funded conservatory scholarship abroad and left without hesitation. After that, Ethan and I became two parallel lines. We never intersected again. I was drifting towards sleep when my phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, yet something in my chest tightened. Almost without thinking, I answered. There was a long silence on the other end before a voice spoke. Anna, it's me. Ethan. My heart slammed against my ribs. I took a slow breath and forced my voice into polite distance. Hi. What can I help you with? He hesitated. Anna, Miss Carter asked me to reach out. There's a class reunion this weekend. Will you come? I was about to refuse when he continued. She's been asking about you. She's very sick. It might be. My chest tightened again. Back then, there had only been one spot for the overseas program. Ms. Carter fought hard to secure it for me, taking it from a well-connected heir who wanted it as a resume decoration. For that, she paid the price. She was pushed out of administration and reassigned to a back-office role. After I moved abroad, I called her every year. When I returned home, I tried several times to visit her, but she always declined. I never imagined. Okay, I said quietly. Send me the time and place. I'll be there. Seeing Ethan again wasn't ideal. But for Miss Carter, I could set aside my resentment. Besides, I needed to know something. Did Ethan dream of the same life I did? That weekend, the moment I stepped into the restaurant, the room erupted. Look. It's our genius Anna. Genius? Please. She's an internationally acclaimed pianist now. My old roommate rushed over and pulled me into their circle, bombarding me with questions and laughter. I smiled and answered them, trying to stay present. Then the room went quiet again. Ethan walked in, pushing Ms. Carter in a wheelchair. From the moment he walked in, I could feel it, a gaze that kept brushing against me, lingering, retreating, returning again. The others noticed too. Their eyes flicked back and forth between us, smiles turning knowing, teasing. I crossed the room quickly and knelt beside Ms. Carter. The moment I took her frail hands in mine, tears spilled freely. Ms. Carter, what happened to you? Ethan's eyes darkened with grief. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off gently. Ethan, this is a reunion. We haven't seen each other in years. Let's not ruin it with heavy talk. She turned to me with a warm smile. Anna, I'm so proud of you. You didn't disappoint me. She tugged me down into the chair beside her. Ethan started to step away toward the guy's table, but she caught his sleeve and pulled him into a seat. Don't you dare run off. You talk about Anna to me all the time. Now you're hiding. Under her teasing, Ethan looked suddenly flustered. The tips of his ears turned red. I glanced at him. His suit was sharply tailored, emphasizing his lean frame. The gold-rimmed glasses gave him a composed, almost austere elegance. His brows were relaxed, his expression gentle, nothing like the dream version of him who always seemed to be frowning. In my memory, Ethan had always looked like this. Bright. Refined. Warm. So how had he become someone else? Ms. Carter seemed happy. After her third glass of wine, Ethan quietly swapped it for water. That's your third one, he said softly. If you drink any more, I'm calling your doctor. She blinked, then turned to me in mock outrage. Anna, look at this brat. He thinks he can boss me around now. Do something about him. I looked up at Ethan. Just one glance, and I saw it. Something tightly restrained behind his eyes. I just. He started awkwardly. Then he lowered his head, almost sheepish, sneaking a glance at me like a boy caught doing something wrong. The classmates nearby burst into laughter. Wait, is this really Ethan? The Ethan? Did I drink too much? Am I hallucinating? It's always been Anna. From high school till now, she's the only one he's ever lowered his head for. Chapter 7. I smiled and turned to Ms. Carter. Ma'am, that's not my jurisdiction. If he's misbehaving, maybe call the police. The table erupted in laughter. One light-hearted joke was enough to diffuse the tension, and to make my position clear. I didn't have feelings for Ethan anymore. 18-year-old us had already missed our chance. And even if we hadn't, I wasn't about to relive the life I saw in my dreams. After the reunion ended, I walked Miss Carter back to the hospital. The hospital room was crowded with medical equipment. The steady hum of machines filled the air, and my chest tightened. If it weren't for me, Miss Carter would probably still be a celebrated faculty chair, not lying here surrounded by monitors and 4 lines. She seemed to sense my guilt and smiled gently. "Don't believe the rumors you hear," she said. "They're not true. When you left, the school was restructuring. Departments were cut, salaries were slashed. A lot of us were reassigned. I couldn't leave my students. Switching teachers right before graduation would have unsettled them. So I asked to stay." She spoke lightly, her smile unwavering, but the ache in my chest deepened. "And your leg?" I asked quietly. She patted it with a small laugh. "Oh, that. I was trying to stop a student from doing something foolish. A car hit me. I walk a little slower now, that's all." She paused, then added, "Ethan's been helping me these past few years. It's made things easier." I blinked. "Ethan?" She nodded and squeezed my hand, urging me to sit. "I knew the rumors back then, about you too. I even thought about stepping in. But before I could, you came to me first. These years, he's been building his company while also checking in on me. It hasn't been easy for him. He's a good kid. I can tell he still carries you in his heart. Whenever we talk, he asks about your concerts, your awards, how you're doing overseas. Every time he says your name, his eyes light up." For years, I buried myself in practice and study, convincing myself I was moving on. I told myself I was forgetting him and the nightmares that had followed me for 12 years. If I had never seen those dreams, maybe I would have believed in him again. But once I realized the man in those dreams was Ethan, every fragile hope I had shattered. "Ms. Carter." "I'll think about it," I said softly. I lowered my gaze, afraid to meet the expectation in her eyes. Afraid of disappointing her. When I left the hospital, I walked alone under the streetlights. My shadow stretched long and thin across the pavement. Maybe it was time to try loving someone else. I hadn't dreamed in weeks, not since the pain that night. But the memories still lingered. And tonight, seeing Ethan again, his suit, his glasses, the smallest details, he looked exactly like the man in my dreams. A gust of wind carried the sharp scent of alcohol. At the mouth of a dark alley, a few drunken men leaned against the wall, staring at me. Their eyes glinted in the dim light. I hesitated. I didn't know this part of town well. If something happened. But if I cut through the alley, the main road was just beyond it. My apartment was right across the street. One of the men noticed my pause and pushed himself off the wall, grinning. "Well, look at that. Pretty lady out alone this late," he slurred, stepping toward me. "Come keep me company. I'll walk you home." He reached for my face. I turned to run, and slammed straight into a solid chest. Ethan stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. He slipped off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders, then calmly rolled up his sleeves. One punch. The drunk who had reached for me crumpled to the ground. Chapter 8. The other men staggered forward when they saw their friend go down, and chaos broke loose. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. One of them spotted me and, while Ethan was distracted, lifted a glass bottle, aiming straight for my head. Ethan grabbed me at the last second and pulled me into his arms. The bottle struck him instead. "Anna, are you hurt?" I shook my head, trying to pull away. Then something warm and sticky dripped onto my cheek. I touched it, and my blood ran cold. "Blood. Ethan, you're bleeding." The men scattered the moment they realized what they'd done. I dropped to my knees, holding him, calling his name over and over. "Ethan, stay with me. Don't close your eyes." He forced them open and managed a faint smile, brushing his fingers against my face. 30-year-old Ethan finally protected Anna. I didn't understand what he meant. His hand fell limp. Operating room. Doctors moved quickly, voices sharp and urgent. Ethan had deep ties to the hospital, and no one dared make a single mistake. All the way there, he held onto my hand, refusing to let go. When they finally pried his fingers from mine at the OR doors, I stayed right outside, his blood still warm on my hands. The bottle had shattered against the back of his head. A jagged shard had sliced downward, carving a long line that ended just behind his ear. A wound eerily similar to the one I once carried. When it was over, he lay in a private room, pale and motionless. His hand was still wrapped around mine. I sat beside him and finally asked the questions that had haunted me for years. Why did you save me? Did you even think about what could have happened to you? Ms. Carter said you still care about me. Then why didn't you ever come see me when I was overseas? I let out a small, bitter laugh. Ever since I was 18, I've been having these daydreams. I dreamed we were together. But every time I woke up, I was alone. I used to think, if you ever confessed, I'd say yes. I waited and waited. Graduation came and you never said a word. Then I saw you teaching that freshman violin, and I gave up. Even after I left the country, I kept dreaming. I dreamed we got married. That we had a child. Then later, in the dreams, you stopped loving me. You fell for someone else. You hated me. Tonight, when I saw you again, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Isn't that ridiculous? Ethan, do you have dreams like that too? Or? His fingers twitched. I looked up sharply, hope flaring in my chest. But his eyes remained closed. After a long moment, I gently slipped my hand from his and tucked the blanket around him. Ethan, if that dream was a version of us in another world. I don't blame you. But I won't love you anymore. Then I walked out. Behind me, Ethan's eyes slowly opened. A single tear slid down the corner of his face. The next day, I brought homemade chicken soup to the hospital. Just as I was about to knock, I heard his voice from inside, hold, controlled. The guys who attacked her have all been picked up. How do you want to handle it? Handle it. My grip tightened around the thermos. The tone in his voice was identical to the man from my dreams. Even the method of punishment. A slow, brutal fate where survival wasn't guaranteed. Chapter 9. For a moment, I didn't know whether I should walk in. Or whether I should walk away for good. The door opened from the inside. His assistant looked startled, then nodded politely. Anna. I nodded back and stepped in. Ethan lay in the hospital bed, bandages wrapped thick around his head. Sunlight streamed through the window, cutting across his face, half in shadow, half in light. He looked like two different men at once. The bright, gentle boy I once knew. And the ruthless husband from my dreams. He noticed the look on my face, the doubt, the distance. You heard that, he said quietly. I paused, then nodded. He lowered his gaze. What if I told you it's not what you think? I looked away. That's your business. You don't owe me an explanation. A flicker of hurt crossed his expression. He turned his face toward the window. While I'm here, could you check on Miss Carter for me? Okay. I handed him the soup. And, thank you. For yesterday. Whatever kind of man he was. He had saved me. Anna. I looked at him. He hesitated for a long time. Then he simply shook his head and let me go. On the eve of my final concert before leaving the country, I received news that Miss Carter had passed away. That was the next time I saw Ethan. He stood in a black suit, grief carved deep into his features. And behind him, assisting quietly, were the same men from the alley. Only now, they stood straighter. Disciplined. Controlled. The men who once looked frail now stood broad-shouldered and composed. In front of the guests, they were polite, almost deferential. I stared at them in disbelief. The one who seemed to lead them noticed my gaze and hurried over. Instinctively, I took 2 steps back. He stopped in front of me and gave a deep, formal bow. I'm sorry, ma'am. We were out of line before. It won't happen again. For a brief moment, my view of Ethan shifted. But I still kept my distance. After the memorial service, I was about to leave when Ethan caught up with me and handed me 2 envelopes. This one is from Miss Carter. She wrote it before she passed. And the other is from me. My letter, open it when you're ready. I stared at the envelopes for a long time without reaching for them. Ethan shifted awkwardly. The hopeful light in his eyes dimmed, little by little. Just as he started to pull one back, I grabbed it from his hand. I'll read it. The light returned to his eyes, and the faintest smile curved his lips. Back home, I read Miss Carter's letter in silence. The line she repeated most lingered in my mind. I hope you and Ethan both find happiness. A bitter smile touched my lips. If not for the dreams, maybe we could have. My gaze drifted to the other envelope, yellowed at the edges. I hesitated for a long time. In the end, I set it aside. If there was no future for us, there was no reason to let an unexpected confession shake my resolve. At my final concert, I wore a silver evening gown and sat at the piano. My fingers danced across the keys like a butterfly about to take flight. From beginning to end, Ethan did not appear. After the performance, I glanced instinctively at my assistant. She looked confused at first, then seemed to understand. She brought over a bouquet of vivid red roses and handed me a letter. He didn't come. The flowers and the note were delivered. Puzzled, I opened it. There was only one sentence inside. One last time, I love you. Chapter 10. I frowned. Why would Ethan suddenly say something like that? After the concert, I began packing. The performances here had been a success. I'd accepted a position as a music professor at Berkeley. Once I left the country this time, I wouldn't be coming back. I stood in the center of the empty house. When I picked up my suitcase and walked toward the door, I noticed the yellowed envelope lying on the floor. It had been stepped on. The surface was scuffed and creased. With a sigh, I bent down, picked it up, and finally opened it. Inside was Ethan's handwriting, clean, steady, unmistakable. Anna, or perhaps, my wife. I don't know whether I should call you that, or whether the future version of me ever earned the right to. After you left, I was in a car accident. I slept for a long, long time. In that haze, I think I saw you at 30. At that time, you were elegant and beautiful. We had a good marriage, and a happy little family of 3. When I saw the house, spacious, warmly decorated, everything I'd once dreamed of giving you, I thought we must have been happy. But then I saw you crying alone inside it. I wanted to walk over, wipe your tears away, and beat the hell out of whoever hurt you. Only to realize the bastard making you cry was me. When I saw you injured, my heart shattered. Maybe leaving you was the only way to protect you. That was when I finally made up my mind to force you away. The golden boy, who took your spot overseas, that was me. When I told Ms. Carter what I planned to do, she first said I'd lost my mind. But after I insisted, she agreed to help me stage everything and send you abroad. I thought if we never saw each other again, I wouldn't miss you. I was wrong. Missing you was its own kind of torture. I couldn't stop myself from flying overseas again and again, just to watch your performances from the back of the hall. Sometimes I even worked up the courage to send flowers. I told myself that maybe, this way, I could keep loving you quietly. But in the hospital, I heard what you said. I didn't know how to face you. So I pretended to stay asleep. If you ever remembered the things that hurt you, every one of them had been done by the 30-year-old version of me. How much pain would that cause you? If it meant sparing you that pain, I would rather believe all of it was just a dream. I would rather carry it alone. But I can't anymore. I'm dying. That car accident changed your life at 18. The price is that the 30-year-old Ethan has to disappear forever. Don't be sad. Seeing you live well now makes me happy. Before I go, though, I want to finish the confession I never made at 18. Anna, I love you. And I hope that without me, the rest of your life is filled with joy. At the bottom of the letter, a small star-shaped necklace had been carefully wrapped and taped into the corner. I let out a soft laugh. But tears slipped down anyway. On campus. After finishing a music demonstration class, students crowded around me, asking about life back home. A few minutes later, a blonde, blue-eyed young man approached, holding a bouquet of vibrant roses. Blushing, stumbling over his words, he said, "Anna, I really like you. Will you marry me?" Laughter broke out around us. Everyone waited for my answer. My fingers brushed the star pendant at my throat. I smiled and shook my head. I'm sorry. I already have someone. He'll always be with me. Sunlight streamed down across the courtyard. And for a moment, I thought I saw 18-year-old Ethan standing in the corner, smiling at me. There was something in his eyes. Like the shimmer of tears. At this point, my love life is a public service announcement. Free of charge.